Alright, response video to a Professor Anton video. And so we'll just, won't want to play in any of his video because he doesn't really have great quotes in them. In terms of much directness, he does ask a few questions. Trying to figure out what do we do is basically the question. What are we here to do? What can we do? But he wants a hopeful answer. He doesn't want an answer that says, "Nah, it's too stupid a game. Let's not bother playing it anymore." He wants an answer like, "Well, okay, it's stupid, but let's make it less stupid," which isn't a bad answer. It's just not good enough. And he sort of describes it like running away. I think he actually uses those words. Sorry, power. Eating my coffee. I'm sorry, the light's dimmed here. I don't know if they dimmed where you are, but just make you, is everything going to turn off? Seems to handle it okay, just spooky. So anyway, yeah, I just can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it's the same old argument that somehow you're not manning up if we don't sit there and do the radical surgery to split the Siamese twins or something. If you go for the simple answer of euthanize them, no, that's you're being a poopy little coward. And it's like, oh, come on, this is way over our skill level, the human race, making something out of this nothing, and it's nothing in the facts. And he's sort of conceding some of that, and he's. I wouldn't call him a glibitarian in the sense that he's kind of he has some dissonance about our role here in terms of accepting what we can notice to be inequities and even absolute horrors of the biology of the mechanism. I don't know if he'd go that far, but I'll concede that he at least seems to have some sense of responsibility and some sense that we know too much to just sit here and say it's all okay. We're too smart for that. So we have to have some kind of explanation, some sort of justification for not having some substantial despair or something. Anyway, so I just wrote down some key words here, and so I'll just play with them a bit. His description of evolution is almost correct, but he always, he does kind of keep out the real truth of it. And I think what I said in the last video about it being, initially it's a virus, it's just stuff multiplying, just go, multiply, split in half, multiply, split in half. And eventually it gets more complicated, it just becomes essentially parasitic. The game is stealing energy from other monsters. It's Bonkster War, whatever you want to call it. And that we do it with this, more sophisticated scheming mechanism, this mechanism that gives us this radar that our battleship has fancier tools on it, more advanced weaponry, and so we're able to blow the other guy up and rip his skin off and wear it and do all that kind of shit. And so yeah, we just became a very dangerous organism in terms of the weapon of strategy that we were endowed with. But these weapons are also make you see things that are called the truth in the process. It's good for scheming, but it's also good for seeing. The telescope can be used, for many things. It can be used to scheme some more money by seeing boats that are supposed to be sunk, and selling short at the stock market, or it can be used to glance up at the stars and realize they're not glitter. That kind of thing. And so we're back to this argument about it all kind of flows back into what's the prime directive, what's the priority for a thinking, elegant, or wannabe elegant human being. A human being that has some sense of being more purposeful than just a monster, just a scheming Pac-Man gobble beastie. And if you have some greater ambition, what's the parameters of that ambition, the priorities and the directives, and because it sort of gets obvious that certain things just aren't good enough. And you could list them like sports, and even family is sort of an ignorance man's passion, because a more intelligent man's going to understand that a child is a child is a child is a child. There's no, this your thing is kind of just silly. And these social values end up having a grander priority just because the extremeness of their deprivation and their excess is so obvious. The wasted luxury and the destitute horror, poor poverty is just too obvious, and it's too urgent for you to get caught up in your disappointment because the Mets lost the ball game. It is all kind of trivial and insulting to something called intelligence. So he focuses a lot on this atheist-theist debate as if the atheists are wasting their time arguing with theists. And I don't know if it's a waste of time. I mean, there's lots of ground that needs. There's lots of there's lots of things that need a smack in the head. Wake up, fucker. A little rattling of a rebooting of their brains. And you could certainly say that theists need some of that to get them with the program, get them on planet Earth, get them back on the ground. But atheists have their own problems in the sense that, many atheists are just nihilists or glibbists, just living the monster's life and saying that's all I'm required to do. Oh yeah, I can see the world, but I don't have to acknowledge the world. And how is that an improvement over a delusional theist? A selfish atheist, or a obnoxiously dogmatic preacher, which is more of a vice and a troublemaker on planet Earth. Well, I have my choice, but they're both bad news. Okay, so it's that gets us to some concession that there's the struggly part of life. You struggle with life because the facts of life kind of aren't good. The basic game we're playing of desire, satisfaction, acquisition, in a world full of precious, vulnerable consumables, the harmables harming kind of scenario, this is a kind of gnarly. I mean, you can't justify harm when you're a harmable, right? Because then you're justifying your own, so it just becomes difficult to know which flowers you can pick, what well you can drink from without poisoning it for others. And that kind of complexity to our, how do we integrate, how do we slide into this game in productive ways? So I like that he asked the question. I'm not going to like his answers, but it's good that he asked the question. He did reference the, this experiencing of choice kind of thing. Like this matters somehow, whether you experience choice or understand that your choice is just an illusion. I don't see how understanding it as an illusion changes anything. It really doesn't. It's just obvious that whatever strings are pulling us, they're so tangled and complex that you're going to have a hard time figuring the subtleties of them out in terms of each individual choice. But we know that the general directions that we crawl, the general directions that we move, we can see those cables. I mean, those aren't even strings, they're cables. I mean, your ego desires and your hunger and your passion and your food, all that kind of, those strings are so big and thick and monstrous, you can't miss those pulling you through life. The little subtle nuance of your particular sexual preferences or your empathy for animals, so maybe your change in food choices, those strings of choice are they clearly have source, they clearly have reason to be pulled one way or the other. There are these little branches off the big cable, you could almost describe, changing the direction a little, and you can trace them back to things in your life and say that's why I am that way. It's not it doesn't come out of nowhere, it comes out of somewhere. It comes out of a life experience of some kind, some sort of knowledge, some sort of, you read Animal Farm and it meant something to you. you gained some kind of insight into these mechanisms and some capacity. Maybe Animal Farm isn't a great way to gain empathy for animals, but maybe it's just the idea that you could understand that you could look at animals and see that they're involved in their own struggle with the strings pulling them, and that they're often in circumstances where they have to make horrible choices. I mean, he talks about choice as if it's only a human experience, and and when he did that, it just popped into my head the image of the gazelle, every year having to cross the big river, and all the crocodiles know to show up, because it's feeding time, and these gazelles have to go from one side to the other. It's their migration. They have to go where the food is. They can't stay or they'll die, and they have to jump into the river. I mean, how do you get more stuck with the mechanisms of choice than in that circumstance where you have to figure out, first you have to give enough will, enough of a cable has to pull you, but just the idea that if I wait 5 minutes he'll be busy eating that guy and he won't be eating me, and then dealing with the implications of even that, who do I let my mother go first? Do I let my sister go first? I mean, there it says, I'm laughing, but I mean, you're going to tell me animals don't face it? They're not in the game? Oh, come on. They're in the game in an emotional level as deep as you can get. And frankly, that's the only level that means anything. That's the level we really live on. I really live on the level of my passion. My intellect is fun. It plays the keys of the piano, but the piano is the emotions. So don't tell me the animals aren't in the game. Their pianos are playing. Okay, their pianos aren't playing what you call music. It's not Mozart to you, but to them, these notes are loud and real and banging. Okay, they're feeling it right to their nuts, man. So don't tell me they're not in the game. But anyway, that's enough of that. And then he gets into some of this evolutionary context, and I don't think he cuts it down to some sort of thing like the real deal is what do you call it? Language and memory. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that's it. But we know what all this stuff is. It's neurons. Neurons were the invention, and they only were invented once. There was a first neuron, just like there was a first DNA cell, and these events only happened once. They don't happen all the time. It's not a common evolutionary theme, where everything does it. And people just have that perception that evolution will end up somewhere. inevitably. And I think there's evidence in the evolutionary record that that's not what happens. That if it isn't for a branching, a special branching, there's a whole big, huge decrease in function and attributes. Mammals were, the first common ancestor to the mammal and the marsupial was a big deal. It was a one-time event, and it was an event that unlocked a whole huge collection of organisms. If you take that one ancestor out of the game, you've got a bug planet. You've got Tyrannosaurus Rex and nothing else. It's a big deal, some of these events. And you can see it in the ocean. I keep making this argument, but take the mammals that went back to sea life, take them out of the ocean, and you've got shit in the ocean. You got octopuses and great white sharks as the intelligence of Earth. In 4 billion years, that's as far as it got. So this idea that it's all going somewhere really good is a stupid idea. It doesn't necessarily go anywhere good. It doesn't even go necessarily into sentience, and it certainly doesn't necessarily go into high intelligence. Because you don't need either one of those things to be a good soldier. And that's really what it's about, being a good soldier. That's what the game of life is kill the other guy, take his shit, and do it without inhibition. Do it without any unnecessary pause. Just necessary pauses. No slower than necessary. Whack it. So anyway, so they talk about human justice in relations to, I suppose, what he's thinking of as the legal system, or back to free will, like we're imposing responsibility. And again, I'm going to argue that I'm not going to be voting for the justice system if we don't need deterrence. If that isn't what we're getting out of it, if we're not preventing harm, future harm, through punishment, then I'm not going to be voting for punishment. It's just that simple. I think if the world was going to end in 4 days because of some catastrophe, I think we'd probably open the cells and let all the prisoners run around in the field. I don't know if we'd let them into society, but I don't think we'd see any point in them dying in their cells. Anyway, personally, I don't think a rational argument could be made for that anyway. You don't try to fix rabid dogs. You put them humanely to sleep. And if you're not reclamating prisoners, then you might as well be putting them to sleep. What else? Let's see. Human justice led to religion. Oh yeah, so that was injustice. So he swears this theory of religion being more of a consequence of some sort of, it's that whole scheme idea or something. That religion was a way to excuse the injustices of man, and I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it was, as we've described in previous videos on this subject, just bad science. It was just bad guesses by ignorance. You're in a world that you don't understand. The world is brutal and harsh, and it seems out to get you, and so of course you turn it into a monster. You turn it into a boogeyman. It seems perfectly reasonable in ignorance to do that. Once you've created that boogeyman, then religion evolves into social order. Religion becomes a mechanism of creating social fences and parameters that are constructive to the society functioning. So the idea that you need a leader is a sensible idea. If you can attach Son of God to that leader, well, that all the better. If you can validate the leader in some way, so every man doesn't look at him as just being another guy or just pulled out of the hat or something. Give him more authority. All the better to his power and ability to control the society. So certainly religion turned into a control mechanism. but so would science, so would anything that came up with prime directives and priorities, anything that defined what is of value and established it by rule. Even democracy can do that. Alright, so, you know, he even brought up the word guilt expulsion or some kind of bullshit, and I don't know what the hell that babble is. I mean, we've had so many of these videos that use that word as if it's meaningful in these conversations, and I really don't think it is. It's just a stupid emotion. You either acknowledge responsibility or you don't. You either acknowledge your culpability in something or you don't. Whether you feel guilt is bullshit. And to expunge it somehow, like somehow that's even possible, that you can wipe away your guilt with anything else but a acknowledgement of ignorance. I mean, isn't that the only way you get rid of guilt, is to somehow make an excuse for your bad judgment, your bad choices? Isn't that it? And that's not the kind of expunging these guys want to do. They don't want to concede that we're making the wrong choices here by torturing this patient, by trying to cure it with our voodoo. And that's sort of what these guys are up to. You know, they want to come up with a potion in a pot that the human race can take, where everything will be all right, at least for the humans, right? And call that guilt expungiation or something. And it's not. You know, it doesn't fix the problem. That's the running away part. That's why I find their rhetoric a little bit offensive, because clearly it seems they are the ones running from the weight of this problem and thinking they can just wave a magic wand or cast a spell and everything will be okay. This thing is broken from the core. Those big giant cables pulling you of desire, acquisition, ego, that shit is not going to be fixed with no voodoo spell. So, evolved into social order by Blather. Yeah, I can't tell what that says. But anyway, it's just what religion evolved into, the social order thing. You know, religion just got incorporated into a social construct because it had beneficial effects to consistency and reliability and dependability, which are really good things to have in a society. It took the chaos out of society, and that's, you need that to build pyramids. You need that to do anything meaningful on this planet. You're going to need an ordered society to have power as a society. A society that doesn't have order will not have power. So now we're down to the end questions again of what do we do, and I guess I don't know if I should say anything more about the literacy and memory. Obviously I have my own argument about what literacy is and how much brain, you know, it's a tiny change in our brain that made all the difference. We didn't incrementally evolve bigger and bigger and bigger, big brain kind of thing. You know, it's a mechanism inside of our brain that changed. It's the way we think that changed, not how big our brain was that made the difference. And it's certainly maturation, I would argue, is part of that mechanism. Our very slow, our crippled maturation. The fact that we stay crippled so long, I think, is a significant fact to why humans are capable of language. And the other thing was literacy and memory. But yeah, again, most mammals have memory. And yeah, I mean, it's a key to intelligence. You have to have memory to have intelligence. And but it's just neurons. It's just the storage, and it's significant, but it's not. It doesn't change that it's all reflexes. And so memory just allows us to have very slow reflexes, to have reflexes that bounce around for decades, and all of a sudden it comes out there, kind of a thing. That's sort of like what a memory is. It's a place for our action to get a little bit swirled, to spend some time, and then we do something based on it. Something has changed about how we behave because of memory. changes us. Alright, so what are we here to do? Again, he doesn't want to hear the answer, clean up the mess. He wants to hear something more. He wants some shiny city on the hill. He wants to build a cathedral or something. He just doesn't want it to be to God. So, maybe the project of, building a 700-foot penis or something might appeal to him. But he doesn't want to build a monument to God. He somehow wants to build a monument to human indulgence, maybe. Humans are special. Maybe write that in big giant letters or something in the sky or in the universe. Maybe we could suck up some of the Saturn's rings. Maybe we could write it. Just send little bomb probes into the Saturn's rings, and blow some of the dust, and we could spell the words "humans are special." Maybe that would be a project that he finds appealing. But I mean, no, I'm being, facetious. I mean, he might want to put some band-aids on stuff. He might want to create some social band-aids of some kind. We'll give babies a little extra pat on the head and say, "Very good, baby." And then when they're 2 years old, we give a little pat on the behind. "Way to go, sport." Maybe we'll be a little more encouraging, a little more helpful. Give people more rubber gloves and stuff, and masks to keep the germs out. I don't know what what are you to do? You're playing a stupid game, rolling dice and having them come up AIDS. And what are you to do? Stop rolling the dice. Sounds like a good idea to me. So, yeah. Quit letting them put us at jeopardy, at risk. Cut the cables. Cut the cables. Yeah, that's a good one. So anyway, response video is now complete. Thank you very much. Until next time. Such.